President Biden is forgiving $6 billion in student loan debt for former Art Institutes students. The Art Institutes was a system of for-profit colleges that closed last fall amid allegations of fraud. The Education Department found that the school was using fabricated data to attract prospective students. For example, the school said more than 80% of its graduates found jobs in the field, when in reality the true employment rate was below 57%.
Meanwhile, the Biden administration has approved the cancellation of almost $160 billion in student loans through a variety of programs, $28 billion of which was canceled for those who were either cheated by colleges or went to campuses that suddenly closed. Twitter personality Nick Sorter took to X to say Biden is, quote, using your tax dollars to buy votes, infuriating. This handout goes to people who took out debt to attend the Art Institute and received degrees in useless fields like dance and painting. But others who are having their loans forgiven are thanking the administration for their hard work. So that's just not true. The point of the cancellation at the Art Institute is because it was a for-profit college that was fraudulently cheating students. There have been a number of these institutions that have had to suffer legal consequences in recent years, and the students that were defrauded have had their loans canceled in a way that seems pretty equitable to me. It's also, Republicans love to go with this line that anything with the word arts in it is about painting and basket weaving. A Bachelor of Arts is called a Bachelor of Arts, despite it encompassing a broad range of subjects. The Art Institute had a lot of different kind of educational provisions, including graphic design, digital web design, a lot of real jobs that people have. We are benefited every day by our graphic designers who have real jobs right here on this program. The idea that the kind of job you have if you're not wearing a hard hat and digging in an oil field means you're not a worthy citizen, it's really a demonstration of how far Republicans have broken with a working class base they used to say that they cared a lot about. Working class people today disproportionately work in retail sales. They're not someone out on an oil rig, not to mention the fact that so many people who do work on oil rigs and who do have kind of vocations had to go and get a vocational education to do that. And they too have an average of about $20,000, $10,000 to $20,000 of student debt that would be canceled under some of these loan forgiveness programs had they not been obstructed by Republicans and by the Supreme Court.
Well, here's my question. If this institution and institutions like it engaged in fraud and induced people to borrow money and submit themselves to their programs under false pretenses, under statistics that they would be so forth likely to get a job subsequently, if they engage, I totally accept that they did that. Why shouldn't they have to, if they did the fraud, why shouldn't they have to pay back the people they defrauded? Why do you and I have to do it?
Because they're bankrupt, they're judgment proof.
Well,
and you and I aren't doing it. The government.
Yes, we are.
No, the government issued these federal loans to the students, and now they're just simply not going to have to repay them. There's no additional money.
That money was already. It's already part of the it's revenue for the government.
Yeah.
So they have to make that out elsewhere by taking our tax money.
You don't think that this is fair because you don't care about this population. I don't think
that's not true. I did not say I don't care about this population. If they were defrauded, the people who defrauded them
but they don't have
should pay it
there's
back.
no money. They're judgment proof. So they're screwed. So you're happy with that?
No, don't put words in my mouth. I'm not happy with that.
You're okay with that status quo?
I'm not. I don't think you and I have to pay for someone else's bad decision.
And we feel differently. Joe Biden is saying that as president of America,
the American tax dollars, people who did not get defrauded in this scheme,
so instead of doing like Donald
people.
Trump and cut taxes for the richest people in the country, make sure that people have
raise your taxes to cover people who took out a loan to go to art school.
Wait a minute, Robby. Instead, I know you don't want me to say out loud the reality.
You can say out loud whatever you want.
Oh, you're not letting me talk again.
Oh, I let you talk plenty.
Instead of Donald Trump adding $1.7 trillion to the American budget for a tax cut that overwhelmingly went to the top 1% of Americans, some people, mostly people who are on the left side of the aisle, think that the breaks that people should get economically should go to the poorest and most working class people in the country instead of the richest. All of these decisions have winners and losers. And the difference is, on one side of the aisle, there has been an argument now for a generation that cutting taxes for the rich and trickle-down economics is going to make your life better. We've seen that not manifest now over about 40 or 50 years. On the other side of the aisle, not frequently enough, I would mind you, because I think the Democrats have failed overwhelmingly in this regard, there are people who say that when you get cheated by a bank, when you get cheated by a school, when you get cheated by a landlord, when you get cheated by financial institutions, you should be the one that gets bailed out, not the banks, not the financial institutions.
No, we agree with that. We totally agree with that.
This is a bailout for people who've been cheated by educational institutions and who are suffering. If you don't think that they should be helped, you don't have to believe they should be helped. But most Americans
I don't think
understand.
you should be forced to help them.
What are you talking about?
Where do you think government money comes from? It is revenue from taxpayers. It is confiscated from you and I and all the people watching.
First of all, that's not true. It is a simplistic right-wing narrative that is fundamentally not true that a government budget works like a household budget. It's fundamentally, you don't have to tax to spend. The purpose of tax dollars is to take money out of circulation to basically have a curb inflation.
Yes.
There's not an inflationary effect. But when the government passes a $90 billion spending bill for Taiwan, Israel, and Ukraine, it's not taking tax dollars that we just paid on April 15th and sending it overseas. That is fundamentally not how that works. It's a cartoonish child version of thinking that that's how the economy works.
Over time, it weakens the value of our money, and we get inflation.
And what's important to know...
I know you believe modern monetary theory.
I do believe in modern monetary theory because I'm an adult.
A pseudoscience
and so
that no one agrees with. It is utterly discredited and no major economist supports. But go ahead.
The other reality is that the most student debtors were already they're not paying back because they're poor and they don't have any money. So the difference on the actual balance sheet of the government is that it's like a small fraction. It's like less than 10% of these people are actually in repayment anyway. So while the outstanding balance amount might look like however many millions or billions of dollars or whatever it is, in effect, the government was never going to see that money anyway. And we also have to remember that the effect on the government is very little in terms of how much money they're going to see. The effect on the student is quite large because they're looking at these incredibly usurious interest rates. So we've walked through before how I think the average student debt burden is $30,000. How quickly, when you're paying an 8% interest rate, that can turn into $100,000, $200,000. And what's happening to people is that they have oftentimes paid more than the principal on their loan, but they continue to have to pay basically until the day they die because of these usurious interest rates. So it's a huge benefit to students to not have to pay that back, especially when they didn't even get the benefit of the degree because they were defrauded.
I would favor a change of the system to allow people to file for personal bankruptcy in the event they can't pay back their student loans and then make it dischargeable. Well,
but Joe Biden, as the senator from Indiana, the senator who was known for his close relationships to the banks, worked to make sure that student debt is one of the only kinds of debt that you cannot discharge in bankruptcy. So student debtors really are uniquely poorly situated among all debtors in the country. And I think there should be very special attention paid to helping an entire generation of people get out from under the yoke of that.
As I said, I support that change. I understand the reason for it, which is unlike, if you declare bankruptcy and the bank comes in, or whoever, the repo people come in and take the assets you have, you can't really confiscate. If you go into bankrupt after you get a college degree, they can't confiscate the diploma or I guess the knowledge you gained as you were doing it. So that's the argument. That said, I do think people who are in catastrophic circumstances for having borrowed far too much in one of these college schemes, it should be dischargeable through bankruptcy. That would be the reform.
It's also worth noting that even if you believed, which is absolutely not true, that you have to tax to spend, Americans are overwhelmingly in favor of a wealth tax. Again, this is not how it works, but if you want to pretend that that's the way the world works, so over 70% of Americans think that's a good idea, and you could raise enormous sums.
Okay, then why don't we just end taxes for everyone? Why do we not pay any? We just make taxes, no more taxes.
Raise enormous sums that could provide for any number of programs, ending homelessness, providing free public colleges and universities, as we talked about, as I've referenced, the Bernie-style programs or even the Elizabeth Warren-style programs, which would tax 2 cents on every dollar of people who are multimillionaires. I mean, it would affect, I think, 5% of the entire population. And understandably, the majority of us who have not seen the gains from labor, from productivity increases over the last 40 years because they've all gone to the top 1%, are supportive of those kinds of changes. But we have our congressional leaders who are among that top 1 to 5%, all shooting down the opportunities to actually implement a wealth tax. And instead, they go out of their way to make sure that rich people get even more tax benefits, including making sure the estate tax continues to benefit the very wealthy. Donald Trump is running on continuing his tax cuts that added again $1.7 trillion to the government to the deficit.
Republicans
Democrats
want people
are going
to keep more of their hard-earned money. Democrats want to take it away.
Democrats are lockstep, actually, with Republicans in wanting to extend the Trump tax cuts. Biden has been president for years now and obviously has not done anything to reverse those kind of pro-wealthy, anti-poor tax programs that Trump put into effect. So there is something really perverse about very wealthy people who they can pay for their kids to go to college without paying the interest premium that the rest of us have to pay, knowing the benefit, rightly or wrongly, that that education serves for their children and their access to higher employment opportunities going on in their life. But to say that you should have at no point, at no turn, any relief from the government for being put in this usurious situation, even by people who are actively defrauded by their university.
The relief should be from the party that defrauded you, and we should not do this arrangement anymore.
Do you know what judgment proof means?
Enlighten me.
It means that the person that you're suing doesn't have any money. They cannot pay you.
Right, they have to have the rest of their assets sold out. I know, that's what happens if you borrow. That's just
No,
what
when a
happens.
petrochemical company poisons the lab leak theory we're just talking about, millions of people died around the world. There's not a lab, a corporation on the planet that could ever pay the cost of what people suffered from COVID. The business cost, the human life cost. They're judgment proof. Whatever accountability happens with that is going to be maybe criminal, but it's not. We're not going to all be able to say, well, my grandma died, but the Wuhan lab is going to pay me death benefits. It's not going to happen.
Well,
There's not enough money.
I support. I don't know why you're yelling at me. I support making it
immoral. I'm deeply frustrated, and this is just honestly there's so many interesting things to talk about. There's so many real news to talk about, and we go round and round in circles, and I have to address these kind of libertarian arguments that frankly aren't really widely even embraced in the public. Some people might have real concerns about what should our priorities be? Are we prioritizing college graduates, or people who at least attended college for some period of time, but not prioritizing people who are homeless, or people who are having childcare issues, or people who are struggling to afford their groceries? And that's a reasonable question about whether or not there are also provisions for those groups as well. And that's the kind of a conversation I'm interested in having. But it does become extremely futile to be having a conversation about should the government do anything at all.
Well, that's a straw man. I'm not having a should the government do anything at all.
You don't think the government should do anything at all.
You're a leftist and you think the government should do everything.
That's correct. I think.
And you think everyone agrees with you. You don't recognize the public opinion wildly against you on many of the things. People don't want bigger government. They don't want more of their money confiscated. They don't want to pay for other people's bad choices. They don't want to bail out for people who got defrauded. They don't want that. Other people made difficult educational choices.
They do want that. The polls suggest that.
I know you think that all leftist policy is overwhelmingly popular, so it's just some mystery.
Yes,
corporations getting in the way that you're taking over government.
Because I can read, and I can read the polls,
you
and I can see
selectively quote things.
It's not Morning Consult, 74% of Americans agree with the statement the wealthiest Americans should pay higher taxes. You can't. So, Robby, you are allowed to have your perspective, but I just would like to be allowed to make an argument that doesn't about you personally. I'm not arguing with. I don't care if 2% of Americans
doing direct pitches to the audience.
If 2% of Americans want to be libertarian and think that the government shouldn't do anything at all, God bless.
Shouldn't do anything.
But it's literally your ideology is that you think the government should be shrunk to be almost nothing at all.
I mean, I can straw man your ideology.
Well, what role do you think the government should play, Robby, as a libertarian? What should they pay for? What should they do?
Defense and police services.
So you want to cut Social Security, you don't think anything, great. So defense and police purposes, everything else, the government shouldn't exist. That, you said it yourself. So for the rest of the world, Americans who are relying on Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid, the majority of American seniors who would be living on the street, impoverished if those programs didn't exist, people who are grateful for OSHA protections, for their right to unionize, all of those people, I'm talking to them about how we should design a government to make sure that we have a better community together as Americans who care about each other.
But people don't. I object to, and I know a lot of people watching object to, a system where people borrow money, make choices, and then you, the American taxpayer, are on the hook for those choices. It's a predatory system that they don't want to participate in, and I don't want to participate in, and
tomorrow on Rising, tune in for our Friday team, and be sure to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss any content for those of you who like to listen while you're on the go. We're now available anywhere you listen to podcasts.
See you next week.
Take care.